Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be answering questions that I raised through my social media accounts concerning my lifetime as a United fan. And what I've done, I've selected the 10 most popular questions and I will try and answer them as fairly and honestly as I can. So, as I said, I asked various fans to fire some questions at me, and here is a selection. Question number 1. Hi Miles, what was your first match at Old Trafford? Long time ago. My first match at Old Trafford was in 1968, and it was the season that we ended up winning the European Cup, and we were at Old Trafford against Newcastle, and we ended up winning 6-0 with a certain Georgie Best scoring a hat-trick. My memories are, I went with my brothers, and I was very young at the time. I think I was about 7, 8 years old, and it was a different atmosphere. We were at the front of the Stretford end. There was 5 of us, and I was right at the front, and I had a great view, and I don't remember so many finer details, but I do remember watching George Best and admiring him as a player. And that was it. I was in. I was a fan. The atmosphere was brilliant, and I enjoyed every moment of it. The next question that came up: who was my favourite player when I was younger? Now, during the 1970s, I would say, without question, my favourite United player was Martin Buchan, one of the greatest captains that we've had. He reigned supreme as a central defender. We didn't win many games when he wasn't in the team, and for me, he epitomised everything about our club. And one of my favourite moments, I think it was against Everton, where he scored a thunderbolt from distance. I think we ended up drawing 1-1. Remember that. Great player. Really admire him. And then that follows on to the next question: who is my favourite player of all time at United? Okay, I was born in the 60s. I grew up watching United through the 70s and 80s. I'm going to go for Brian Robson. I admire him as a player and as a person. I actually was lucky to meet him a couple of times. Once when he was still at West Bromwich Albion, I went to an event. I think I was about 18, and I went to one of these football quiz events, and he was one of the guest speakers there. And it was literally 2 weeks before he joined United. He had his perm, his famous perm, and 2 weeks later he was on the pitch at Old Trafford signing, and I got a photograph with him. Then years later, I happened to be at Old Trafford just getting some souvenirs from the old shop, and he was there. And he was very welcoming to all the fans, and nice guy. And then a couple of years ago, I met him at Old Trafford for a match. I can't remember the match itself, and of course he doesn't know me from Adam, but he very warmly shook my hand just as he was entering the directors area, or where the VIPs go in. Who was the most famous Man United player that I've ever met? Look, as I said before, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and in Manchester in those days, you saw players out and about all the time. I sat behind Bobby Charlton in the cinema, and I saw George Best having lunch at the restaurant chain that was called the Golden Egg. Now that's going back. Some of you of my age will remember that in Manchester. I was playing cricket in a park in Chiltern with some kids, and their father came to pick them up, and their father was Dennis Law. So in those days when I was growing up, you saw them all around. It was nothing new, and nobody was running around and asking for autographs or selfies because we didn't have that sort of media at the time. But I probably would say that when I met Denis Law a few years ago, I was visiting Old Trafford Museum with my son, and they were opening a new exhibition celebrating the career of Denis Law, and he was there, and I didn't know he was going to be there, and we met him, and he very kindly had some photographs with my son, and later my son was saying, "Who was that?" Because he was so young at the time, and I've got some nice photographs of being together with Denis, and great guy, such a nice man, such a gentleman. And we had a chat for 5 minutes, and I told him the story of when I was in the park, and he very obviously didn't remember, nothing like that, but he was very good about it. So that was a great event for me. Another question asked by one of the followers is, which player do I wish United had signed, but we didn't? And the simple answer to that question is Paul Gascoigne. What a player he was. And apparently we had him. He was there. He was done. Ferguson had phoned him and agreed everything with him. He went on holiday, had a few too many, I think, and then for some reason completely did a U-turn on us. But I honestly believe that Ferguson would have been the right manager for him at that time, and maybe things could have ended differently, and he would have been a fantastic addition, and I think he would have fitted the club very, very well. One of my followers has asked this question: what is your favourite United kit? Well, I have two, actually. One of them is the 1999 Champions League final kit, for obvious reasons. But the second was the black kit from the 1990s. And if you think about that black kit with Sharp on it, and it makes you remember players like Lee Sharp, Paul Ince, Eric. So that would probably, I would say my favourite home kit would be the Champions League final, and my favourite away kit would be the black. And I'm happy that this season they're going back to black. I love the new kit, the new third kit. So those are my favourites. The next question is quite interesting. Hi Miles, do you have a second team that you follow? I don't really, but I do look for Blackpool's results. And the reason being is that when I was in my last few years at high school, I ended up living near Blackpool in a place, lovely town called Lytham, for a few years, with my mother's job was there. And when United were at home, I would travel down to Manchester, of course. But when United were playing away and I couldn't get there, I would go to Blackpool home matches at the Bloomfield Road Stadium. These were in the days of players like Derek Spence, and it was good times. It was, a good team at the time. They were in the second division, always pushing for promotion but never quite making it. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So I still have a slight infinity with Blackpool, and I do look for their results. And it was great to see them in the Premier League a few years ago. Obviously they didn't survive, but that would be my choice. The next question is, what is your biggest disappointment as a Man United fan? The most obvious one is when Alex Ferguson retired, because I just had that feeling that we were not going to be as successful after him. And it's still true. And over the last 10 years, there's been even more disappointments. But there is one match that really sticks in my gut, and that was the draw that we ended up having at Upton Park against West Ham, when we lost the Premier League on the last match of the season to Blackburn and to Alan Shearer in '95. The amount of chances we had in that match, especially Andy Cole, That's probably the biggest disappointment I've had as a fan. Question number 9. Which teams do you hate the most? No surprise there. Liverpool. Always have. I was brought up to hate them. I was, in the 70s, I was watching them win everything. So it was great to see when Fergie got us on track that we were taking over and knocked them off their perch. It's sad and disappointing that we're not challenging them now, and that the fact that they've drawn level with us with league titles. So that's the first team. The second team is Leeds. I just don't like them. I went to a couple of away games a few years ago, and they were still doing Munich chants and singing about the plane crashing. I just hate them, really. And City, simply because they're in Manchester, and they are our noisy neighbours. But I would say in order: Liverpool first, Leeds second, City third. And now we come to the last question I'm going to answer, which is, what are the best and worst stadiums that I visited in England and abroad? I would say my favourite stadium to visit in England was always Villa Park. Some great memories there, and I enjoyed going down there. A lot of history. Nice stadium, enjoyed that. Worst was the old Highbury, Arsenal's old stadium, and really did not enjoy going there. It was dirty, it was run down, it was smelly, it was just disgusting. And if you've been in the away end at the old Highbury, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If we talk about stadiums that I visited in Europe, then my favourite would have to be the Bernabeu. Wow. Okay, I know they've revamped it now and it looks better on the outside, but when I went there, it was before the refurbishment on the outside, and it looked like a multi-storey car park. But inside, wow, amazing. I've also been to stadiums in Turkey, and the most intimidating atmosphere was at the Galatasaray old stadium. From the first moment until the end, it was bouncing and very, very hostile. So I would say best stadium abroad, Bernabeu, and the worst one for atmosphere against us would be the old Galatasaray stadium. So those are the answers to some of the questions about my life as a United fan. I hope you enjoyed that. I would love to hear your comments answering the same questions. So please feel free to answer some of those questions about your life as a United fan. And thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing and liking. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.